In this video I'm going to talk about the Bible hoax, the fake Jesus. I will be debunking the virgin birth and show you the Greek and Roman connection to the New Testament. Let's investigate. Let's start with the New Testament, Matthew 1:20. But while he thought about these things, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream, saying, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take you, Mary, your wife, for that which is conceived in her is of the Holy Spirit. And she will bring forth a son, and you shall call his name Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins. So all this was done that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the Lord through the prophet, saying, Behold, the virgin shall be with child, and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which is translated, God with us. A couple of problems here already. First of all, if you look at Matthew 1:21, we will see that his name is Jesus, okay? Now, the Greek says Iesos, and this name was basically anglicized. So that's already a problem because they didn't keep the Greek name, which was the original name. Why would you change it to Jesus? This Iesos is coming from the word Zeus, from the Greek mythology, Zeus the god. Zeus is the sky and thunder god in ancient Greek religion who rules as king of the gods of Mount Olympus. Mount Olympus, put that together, where was Jesus? On Mount Olives. Mount Olympus, Mount Olives. Again, the same kind of thing coming up again. It's synchronicity. Some words, some letters change, but stays the same thing. Let's go to the most important part here, Matthew 1:23. Behold, the virgin shall be with child and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which is translated, God with us. And this is referencing Isaiah 7:14, where it says, Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. Now the problem lies in most Christians' understanding and how they read the Bible. They don't read it in context. When you read it in context, you will get into real trouble. Let's read it further. Curds and honey he shall eat, that he may know to refuse the evil and to choose good. For before the child shall know to refuse the evil and choose the good, the land that you dread will be forsaken by both her kings. Let's go to the next chapter. Then I went to the prophetess, and she conceived and bore a son. Then the Lord said to me, Call his name Maher-shalal-hash-baz. You can see in verse 3 that it was Isaiah who was prophesied to have a son. It wasn't Mary who was prophesied to have a son, it was Isaiah. And this prophecy had been fulfilled right there in the next chapter. He says here, Then I went to the prophetess, and she conceived and bore a son. It was the same son in the previous chapter who was said to be born out of this woman. It has nothing to do with Mary, okay? Nothing to do with the New Testament. This prophecy was already fulfilled back then in the age of Isaiah. And Christians come up with explanations like dual prophecy. There's nothing like that. According to the Old Testament, dual prophecy is non-existent. Now let's go back to the previous chapter here. Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. Okay, and this is in the English translation. Now you have to bear in mind that the Bible wasn't written in English, right? Newsflash, it wasn't. The Old Testament was written in Aramaic, which is a Jewish language, a Hebrew language, and the New Testament was written in Greek. Now let's go deeper into 7:14 here. So here it says, Therefore the Lord Adonai himself shall give Nathan you a sign, O, behold the virgin Alma. Let's stop here. Behold the virgin Alma. So the word for virgin in the Hebrew is Alma, apparently according to most English translations. But is it really? Let's have a look. The word Alma is a feminine noun, and it means virgin or young woman of marriageable age, maid or newly married. So basically, according to this entry, it can be a young woman as well. Now here comes the deception, because the word Alma in Hebrew never meant virgin. It always meant young woman. And I'm going to show you proof for that. Let's see some references here. Genesis 24:43. Behold, I stand by the well of water, and it shall come to pass that when the virgin comes out to draw water, and I say to her, Please give me a little water from your pitcher to drink. Exodus 2:8. And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, Go, see the maiden went and called the child's mother. Now you see here it was translated as maiden. So how is it that one word was translated once as virgin, and then in the next verse it's translated as maiden? I worked as a translator, and I know that is bullshit. When you have a word, you always translate it in the same way. Here's another one. The singers went before, the players on instruments followed after. Among them were the maidens playing timbrels. Again, this time they chose to translate it as maidens. Why not as virgins? The word Alma never meant in the Hebrew language virgin. It means maiden or young woman. And that's it. There are no more references to the young woman. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 references only in the Old Testament. Even though the Old Testament is so much keen on virginity. It's a big topic in the Old Testament, and yet only 8 references. Because this word only means one thing, young woman, and not virgin. Here's another word I want to show you. It's called betula in Hebrew. And that means virgin. And that's the only single meaning for this word. Now let's see how many references we have for the virgin. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the list just goes on and on until the end of the page. I'm still just scrolling. It's probably more than 30 or 40 references just talking about the virgin, probably 50. Genesis 24:16. Now the young woman was very beautiful to behold, a virgin, no man had known her, and she went down to the well, filled her pitcher, and came up. Now, to those who don't know biblical language, knowing her means having sex with her. So no one had sex with her. And clearly, from the context, we can see that they are describing a virgin who never had a sex with a man. That makes sense. So, betula means virgin, and in context we can see that it really means virgin. Here's another one, Exodus 22:16. If a man entices a virgin who is not betrothed and lies with her, he shall surely pay the bride price for her to be his wife. Again, from the context we can see it very clearly. This is talking about a virgin who was not betrothed and someone lies with her, then she loses her virginity, and then therefore she has to become the man's wife. Now let's go back to Matthew 1:23. Behold, the virgin shall be with a child and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which is translated God with us. First of all, we established already that this prophecy had been fulfilled, so there is no reason for Matthew to quote this as a prophecy for Jesus to be fulfilled, as this has been already fulfilled by Isaiah and marrying the prophetess. But the deception is that they translated it as virgin. This is a young woman. It says, Behold, the young woman or the maiden shall be with a child and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which is translated God with us. So there's already 2 deception here. One is that this prophecy has been already fulfilled, and the second one, that this word virgin should never have been there. It should have been young woman or maiden. Now here's the third deception. I want you to think about this. How can virginity be a sign? Okay? Just think about that. There are false prophets coming up, and the Old Testament talks about false prophets, that we have to test false prophets. So how do you test this prophecy? Okay? How do you go to a woman and check whether she is a virgin? There's no other way to check whether a woman is a virgin or not other than having sex with her and having some blood as a result. So basically, this couldn't have been really a sign. Okay? It just doesn't make sense. So let's go back to Isaiah 7:14. It says here, Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the maiden shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. Curds and honey he shall eat, that he may know to refuse the evil and choose the good. Now you can see that it was not the virginity that was the sign. Anyway, that was the wrong translation. So it wasn't the sign that the woman was a young woman, right? What a nonsense. The sign was that this child was very advanced. He was very mature, because when he was already a small child, he was eating curds and honey. That was the sign, which was a sign that anyone could have noticed. Okay? Going back to Matthew 1:23, now let's summarize this. 3 deception. 1 is not virgin, because it should have been translated as maiden. Second, this prophecy had been already fulfilled. There is no need for Jesus to fulfill this again. And third, virginity couldn't be really a sign because it cannot be tested. So by just this alone, you should think about your belief system. And I had to re-examine my belief system because I have been a Christian for more than 30 years. I was born into it. I was into it. You can check my credentials. I was very active in the community. And I had to realize this whole thing was a fake. It was a hoax. And this is just one thing I showed you. One verse. But there are literally hundreds and thousands of contradictions in the Bible. And I'm going to show you those in the next videos. So what we established so far is that this Jesus character, this fake Jesus, came out of a prophecy that was already fulfilled and came out of a wrong translation and a deception. When I dropped the New Testament, then I went to the Old Testament and I became basically a Karaite Jew. And this guy helped me a lot to understand the contradictions in the New Testament. So I no longer believe in the Old Testament anymore because that is also full of contradictions. So I dropped that one as well. But since he has some good content and good explanations about the New Testament, I'm going to link a couple of his videos in the description of my video under sources and credits. When you click on the link, you will see a list on my article. Now the other thing is there are 400,000 variants in the New Greek manuscripts. Okay? 400,000. That is again 400,000 variants. Which one is true? We now have discovered nearly 6,000 Greek manuscripts of the New Testament. We don't know how many mistakes there are among our surviving copies, but they appear to number somewhere about 400,000. I will put this in comparative terms. There are far more differences in the New Testament manuscripts than there are words in the New Testament. Just let that sink in. Bear in mind that well over 90% of these errors are the result of sloppy slip-ups and are insignificant. They show us nothing more than ancient scribes could spell no better than most people can today. Textual critics, however, contend that they can reconstruct more than 90% of these mistakes. This may be the case. We can never say that we can know that this would be matched to the original books of the New Testament because nobody has the originals. They are lost. Nobody has the originals. These are all copies made by scribes, and there are more than 400,000 variants and more than 400,000 mistakes in them. And we believe that this is kind of the truth? Give me a break. Here is a list of the New Testament manuscript. I'm going to link this also from the video description below. Now these are the kind of manuscripts that we are talking about. Look at that. So how can you really rely on this when words and letters are missing? Now think about this also. The New Testament is very clear that Jesus was a Hebrew and all his disciples were Hebrew and they lived in Israel, right? Am I correct or am I wrong? Prove me wrong, but it's there in the Bible. Now the question you must ask, why was the New Testament written in Greek? If they spoke Hebrew and Jesus spoke Hebrew, why all his words are in Greek? Well, let me tell you why. Because this never happened. It's all fake. Greek is the language of philosophy. And these people who wrote the Bible were philosophers. They wanted to make a point. And I'm going to go into that in the next video. This was never inspired by God. There is no reason for Hebrew-speaking people to write in Greek. Now the last thing I want to show you is Caesar's Messiah, the Roman conspiracy to invent Jesus. And this is from Caesar's Messiah YouTube channel. Now this is a video that I ask you to please watch it. Please spare 1 hour 23 minutes of your life and watch this video. It's going to change your life. I promise you. It changed mine. It basically explains how the Caesars invented Jesus for their own gain to control the people. I hope it's not new that religion is used for control. It's used for divide and conquer. When you divide the people, they are yours. And the point of the New Testament is to create this kind of Jesus character who was very meek and humble. Because they needed this in the midst of the Hebrew-Jewish revolt. They had to calm down people. And they created this text. It's also a very sloppy way of copying from the Old Testament. Here are a couple of examples. Old Testament, Joseph goes to Egypt. Matthew, Joseph goes to Egypt. Old Testament, Pharaoh massacres boys. Matthew, Herod massacres boys. Old Testament, all the men are dead who sought your life. Matthew, all the men are dead who sought your life. Old Testament, from Egypt to Israel. Matthew, from Egypt to Israel. Old Testament, passing through water. Matthew, passing through water, baptism. Old Testament, in the wilderness. Matthew, in the wilderness. Old Testament, tempted by bread, do not tempt God, worship only God. Matthew, tempted by bread, do not tempt God, worship only God. You can't make this stuff up. It's copy, paste. Nothing else. Not the word of God. I'm sorry guys. I had to realize it, and it was very difficult. As I said, I lived most of my life as a Christian, and I had to realize the whole thing was a hoax. And that's it for me guys for today. So if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Please don't forget to subscribe and like this video. And if you want to support my work, please go to my website, kick in a couple of bucks so that I can continue this channel, get your merch, get your wall art, or sign up for my upcoming book. If Jesus visits you and knocks at your door, don't open it. See you in the next one.